I'm sorry, you got to be more specific.
Kids
Mm-hmm.
can, uh,
Uh-huh.
what do you call
Can
gender affirmation? Okay, have the
well,
operation.
okay, you understand, first of all, that the biggest the most prevalent gender affirming surgery is breast removal, tissue removal for cisgender male boys.
Okay,
Okay,
but we're
so
not
understand
talking about
people.
that.
Okay, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because if people are okay with
All right, I'm gonna stop Mr. Blabbermouth before he gets into his stupid takes to intro this video. What is up, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. This clip from the Club Random podcast is Bill Maher and John Cryer having a debate over transgenderism in America. And as you probably can guess by the word transgenderism, it is going to have some extremely woke and just extremely stupid takes and ideas. And John Cryer is going to be spitting out these woke takes over and over again. To be honest, there's not really much I can say here in the intro, so instead of me continuing to talk, let's just go ahead and get into this clip, and I'll pause where it makes sense, giving you my rebellious take and seeing just how dumb some of these woke takes are. So let's just get into it.
people are always saying we don't want young people making those decisions for lifelong decisions when they're still very young. I mean, that seems to be what people are.
Well, that's
What,
where Europe, where all the liberal countries that we used to be aligned with on this issue a few years ago, we are not. I'm just saying, let's not even get
well,
into the details.
honestly,
Let's just get into the fact.
oh, okay,
Just start with the
okay.
fact
Tell me
that
the facts.
America does this in a way nobody else does. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying it's necessarily definitely wrong, although I do think it is. But no other country does self-diagnosis by children, no age limit.
That's not what's occurring. But
That
go
is
ahead.
what is occurring.
It's not occurring
Or it
because, and
certainly
by the
can.
way, the thing you're talking about is a thing called the Dutch Protocol, which obviously started in Holland.
Started in Holland. Yes, I'm familiar.
Yes, okay. So Europe, so you're saying U.S. doesn't use the things that Europe does, but they do.
Which they abandoned.
Well, no, they did not abandon it.
Yeah, they
no,
do.
And we can argue about the Cass review as well. I'm aware of it.
Right.
Yes,
England.
which did not, which its conclusions did not match its own data. But okay, we'll talk about that later if you're open to
That's
that.
too
But,
in the weeds.
Okay, but see, but that's what I'm saying is the truth is in the weeds, dude. And
No,
and unfortunately,
for the audience, too in the weeds.
Okay.
I mean, it's and maybe for me at this point, because I don't have the Cass report right in my mind.
Aha.
Many people who are saying, "What is that?" A British woman who is a pediatrician and also was this was her field of study.
There was a big controversy
She
about
did a report.
the NHS. Yes, about the NHS transgender care, and unfortunately, the NHS is under a lot of scrutiny for many things because national health care is often very controversial because people have to prioritize very specific care for specific people, and it's hard to do that in a governmental way.
All right, John might have actually brought up a point that I might slightly agree with. Just one point, though, which is about the NHS. Like, we live in a country with socialized medicine where healthcare is supposedly free and accessible, is what they're saying. They're saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't be rushing kids into irreversible treatments. But we live in a country called America where healthcare is a for-profit industry we are all in. Is that a coincidence? I think not. I mean, for example, in the UK, the NHS is under fire for not providing enough gender-affirming care fast enough. But at the same time, they're also being criticized for not being cautious enough. It's a lose-lose situation, and yet, in America, we've got hospitals, pharmaceutical companies making bank off these procedures. Surgeries, hormone therapies, follow-up appointments, it's honestly a goldmine. And when there's money to be made, suddenly everyone is an expert on what's best for kids. I mean, it's a very important thing to think of because when you've got hospitals and pharmaceutical companies profiting off these procedures, it's hard not to be skeptical. I mean, I'd love to hear if you guys would agree with that. Do you think there's something going on in terms of the industry because of the money that's being made? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, this is a point that I might actually agree with John here because it is an important thing to think of, but let's get back to his other points that I definitely don't agree with.
Correct.
But there was a lot of people saying that kids who were going through gender dysphoria were not getting enough care before they were making lifelong decisions, and that's a concern, absolutely. But the report said that they were actually getting enough care, but they as a society were using it as a way to say, uh, uh, we don't want this to even be a possibility for people under 18. And so at any rate,
Right, and that's too far. And like it's a shame that we can't ever just meet in the middle of what's common sense. Like Trump, I see they're not letting somebody use the bathroom. I mean,
exactly.
it's like it's
Again,
just can we just not do stupid on either side?
but
You
see,
know,
what
and
I'm saying is that parents who have kids who are going through severe gender dysphoria have very limited options to begin with, and they're usually trying to think about the survival of their child, and so limiting what they have access to
and there's
when there actually is an enormous amount of statistical evidence that supported the Dutch protocols. Um, uh, y-
there's
I think it's wrong to limit their to for government to limit what they feel is the appropriate medical
there
treatment for their
there
kids.
are cases where it is appropriate, I think.
Okay.
Okay, I think this is the standard liberal position. And then there's like the people who won't admit that some of this is social contagion. Some of this is just a TikTok trend that got out of hand.
I don't agree.
Uh, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
that's what friends are for. To
Okay.
be able to come to it and go, okay, we've elucidated our points enough. People get where we're coming from, and they just, they'll trust me. In this town, everybody, you'll be the big champion. You own Bill Maher because they
I
just want to agree with
well,
you. And my take on this, just as like super friend to friend now, is just like the people in this town, they just want to be warriors, social justice warriors. So they're just always looking for a cause. And it's so much more often about them than the cause itself. Not that they're not sincere about stuff, but like what bugs Dave Chappelle so much about the trans thing, I think it's the fact that they want to make it the social justice issue of their generation. And it just doesn't compare to other ones. It's important, it's an issue.
mhm.
I think it's great we live in a time when trans people can be, respected and protected, but you're asking too much often to rewrite like the idea that when someone is born, there is a default setting for humans, male and female. Not everyone is. Now, a real conservative would say, no, everyone is. I
But
would never say that. I
but
think
there
what
are
a liberal
chromosomal
says
there are
is yes,
chromosomal
there's a
spectrums.
default there's a
There's
default setting, but
hermaphroditism.
then there's a whole other
Yeah.
other section, and that's great, and we should protect those people. But don't pretend there isn't also a default setting. And you can't rewrite the world so that every baby is just a jump ball. Oh, it could be anything. No, if it's got a dick, it's probably a boy.
If it's got a dick, it's probably a boy, which, I mean, it's true. Like, come on, look, I get it. We live in a world where feelings often trump facts and people want to be inclusive, but inclusivity doesn't mean we throw away basic biology out the window. There's a reason we have terms like male and female. They're rooted in reality. And Maher is absolutely right to push back against this idea that every baby is a blank slate, a jump ball, as he says. That's not how human beings work. Most people are born either male or female, and no amount of woke rhetoric is going to change that. What's really annoying is how the woke crowd acts like acknowledging biology is some kind of hate crime. It's not. Biology isn't bigotry. Saying most people with a penis are male isn't transphobic, it's just science. But they want us just to pretend we can, wish it away because it doesn't fit their narrative. And what's even more annoying is they're demanding that we play along with their fantasy that biology doesn't exist. They want us to pretend that every baby is a mystery, that we can't possibly know anything about their sex until they're old enough to quote unquote decide. Like, come on. That's not just ridiculous. If anything, that's dangerous. Because kids are already confused enough about who they are, they don't need adults adding to that confusion by telling them their biology might be a lie. I mean, Maher's pretty blunt with it here, but sometimes, to be honest, you need to be blunt, especially with stuff like this, because it's just simple fact that biology isn't going anywhere, no matter how much the woke crowd wants us to pretend otherwise. And if that makes me anti-trans, then so be it, but I'd rather be honest than live in a fantasy world where just facts don't matter anymore. Again, that's what I think. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let's go ahead and check out these other few points and again, how stupid they are.
And if it's
Probably.
not, we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that in a compassionate way.
Well, yeah,
But
I
we'll
think
also be apprised of the idea that children don't know shit about anything. Yes, sometimes it is obvious, and we should address it that way. But I mean, kids, Christ Almighty! I mean, the idea that I would, as a child, would have had to have dealt with something like this.
Well, again, the people that go through it don't say this is the life I want. No parent wants to be in the midst of those choices. It's
Some
terrifying.
kids these days actually just do want to be trans.
I
It's
don't
cooler,
agree.
John.
I don't
It's
agree.
a thing.
Nope.
Oh,
I don't agree.
come
I
on.
don't agree with Bill Maher.
I don't.
That's the name of the show tonight.
Well, your eyes are not open to that. I
Okay.
think.
Well,
I really.
okay. You
There are
can-
some kids,
yeah.
especially. Why is it like so much more prevalent, like here than Indiana?
Well,
Are they suppressing it there? Maybe a little.
yeah, there's
But
a
more-
societal
but like-
suppression, but it's like left-handedism. Being left-handed was suppressed for for
Yes.
thousands of years amongst human beings. But once it was apparently in the 30s, scientists basically said there's no left-handedness doesn't actually do anything bad.
Right.
Left-handedness shot up. People just stopped training themselves to be right-handed. And this has
Well,
happened societally before, and that's the closest analog that I can think of.
Okay, but I think the numbers are faulty in that one. I mean, how many people are left-handed? 15%, something like that.
It went from like 8%
So you think
to
that
15%.
15% of us are born in the wrong body?
I don't know, but I do believe that parents who are dealing with that situation in their child need to be able to make those decisions.
I don't think it's as high as 50%.
All right, John ends off his point by making maybe the strongest point that I've seen within this clip, but even for it being the strongest point that I've seen, it's still pretty darn weak, and let me explain. Cryer's trying to compare the rise in left-handedness after societal oppression to the rise in transgender identification among kids today. And I'm sorry, but that's just not the slam dunk that he thinks it is. First of all, being left-handed is not the same as undergoing irreversible medical procedures. Let's get that out of the way right now, because left-handedness doesn't involve hormone blockers, surgeries, or lifelong medical treatments. It's a hand preference, not a life-altering identity. So to even suggest that these two things are comparable is either incredibly naive or deliberately misleading. Secondly, Cryer's argument ignores the role of social contagion. Yes, left-handedness increased when society stopped suppressing it, but that's because people were naturally left-handed all along. They were just forced to hide it. With transgender identification, especially among kids, we're seeing a massive spike in cases, particularly among teenage girls, that coincides with the rise of social media and online communities promoting this stuff. That's not natural, that's based off influence. No one's out here getting their hands surgically altered because they think they were born to be left-handed. But with transgender identification, we're talking about kids making decisions that could permanently alter their bodies and lives. That is a huge difference, and Cryer's analogy completely glosses over it. And what's even more frustrating is how this argument is used to shut down any criticism of the current trend. Cryer's basically saying, oh, people thought left-handedness was weird too, and now it's normal, so just accept this. But that's a false equivalence. We're not talking about something as harmless as writing with your left hand. We're talking about medical interventions that have serious lifelong consequences. Cryer's argument is honestly just a classic example of woke logic. Take a superficially similar situation, ignore all of the important differences, and use it to silence dissent. But we can't let them get away with that here, because the stakes are honestly just simply too high. So no, John's left-handedness is not a good analogy for what's happening with transgender identification among kids. To be honest, it's just a lazy argument that doesn't hold up to the scrutiny. And if that's the best you've got, then maybe it's time to rethink your position. At least that's what I think. And the final point that I want to end off today's video that Maher mentioned earlier before John went into his left-handedness argument is where he said kids don't know what they want. They are kids. Which, to be honest, I think is a perfect point to end off, because a question that I'd love to ask all of you, and I want you to genuinely think about this for the rest of today. Would you trust your 10-year-old self to make a decision about something as serious as surgery? Not transgender identification surgery, just generally any surgery. Hopefully your answer should be hell no. Childhood is confusing enough without adding permanent medical decisions into the mix. And to be honest, it's just crazy to me that this is even has to be an argument. But as always, I'd love to hear your guys' answer to this question and just generally your thoughts about this clip as a whole. Let me know if you agree or disagree with the points that I made, the points that Bill made, the points that John made. Let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.